Few Gold Rush stars have gotten fans excited quite like Tony Beets, the Dutch-born miner who turned Yukon dirt into millions of dollars. But lately, fans keep asking one question. What really happened to him? From big controversies that took him to court to crazy internet stories claiming he was sent to prison for life, Tony's story has become a mix of real facts, made-up tales, and total confusion. So how did one of TV's toughest miners end up in the middle of so much gossip? Stay with us because the truth about Tony Beets might just shock you. Tony Beets' story starts on December 15, 1959 in the Netherlands. Born to Klaus and Magda Beets, Tony grew up in the small village of Weidens, where life on the family farm taught him two things early on: hard work and a love for big machines. When he was just 7 years old, his family moved to Bergweerd in Friesland. But life wasn't easy. After his father got badly hurt in an accident, young Tony had to step up and take over most of the farm jobs. That experience shaped who he became, building up his toughness, confidence, and maturity that would help him through every challenge that came later. Even though he came from many generations of farmers, Tony never thought that would be his final job. By his early 20s, he wanted something different. So at 23 years old, he and his girlfriend Minnie, who would later become his wife, took a huge chance. With only $300 in their pockets and not knowing how to speak English, they left the Netherlands behind and went to Canada, arriving in British Columbia. It was a brave move, and staying alive meant working hard from day one. Tony's first job in Canada was milking cows in Salmon Arm for $4 an hour. But that wasn't making enough money, so he switched to construction work. Within just 1 week, he got promoted to foreman, showing how quickly he could learn and be a leader. Over time, he learned how to operate heavy machinery and worked on oil pipelines, gaining important experience that would later shape his career. Meanwhile, Minnie worked just as hard, taking jobs in stores, healthcare, and restaurants to help keep their dream going. Then came the rumor that changed everything. People started talking about workers up in the Yukon making over $1,000 a week mining gold. For Tony, that was all the push he needed. In March 1981, he packed up and headed to Dawson City. But when he got there, he found out he was too early. The gold season hadn't started yet. With no jobs to be found, he went back to British Columbia to keep working in the oil fields. Still, that Yukon dream never left his thoughts. 3 years later, in 1984, his chance finally came. A mining company called him back to the Yukon, and Tony didn't wait. He started small, operating heavy machinery at the Tamarack mines, the same mines he would one day own himself. That's where everything started to change. Eventually, Tony started his own mining company called Tamarack, Incorporated, right in the Dawson area. Through hard work, never giving up, and a little bit of luck, it grew into one of the biggest privately owned placer gold mines in the whole Yukon territory. But success didn't come easy. With only about 7 months of mining weather each year, Tony and his crew worked 12 to 14 hours a day, pushing through freezing cold, machinery that kept breaking down, and constant pressure. His way of thinking was simple. Gold mining only works if you're there every single day making it happen. He understood that even with all the hard work in the world, luck played a huge part. One season could make you a millionaire, and the next could take everything away. That's why he counted on his team, especially his family. Minnie became the backbone of the operation, taking care of all the bookkeeping and money decisions. She was smart, careful, and sometimes the only one standing between Tony and a risky choice. Their kids, Monica, Kevin, Mike, and Bianca, all joined the family business over time. Tony admitted he was harder on them than anyone else, but he also made sure they got paid fairly and understood what real hard work meant. Even with the tough schedules, his kids kept coming back every season. And when the mining season ended, they traveled together, giving Tony a chance to just be their dad instead of the boss. With his family by his side, Tony kept growing bigger. He got his first major claim at Paradise Hill, followed by new ones at Indian River and Clear Creek. His big plans didn't stop there. He went on to fix up two massive old gold dredges that could process huge amounts of dirt. Now, Tony's rise to TV fame really took off during Season 2 of Discovery Channel's popular show Gold Rush. His tough, straight-talking personality instantly made him stand out. That season, the show's main person, Todd Hoffman, who was having trouble keeping his mining dream alive, came to Tony for help. For anyone who doesn't know, Gold Rush, originally called Gold Rush Alaska in its first season, follows several family-run mining crews as they chase fortune across Alaska and Canada. The show first came on TV in December 2010 and focused on 6 men from Oregon who had lost their jobs and decided to risk everything on a gold mining adventure in Porcupine Creek, Alaska. The interesting part: none of them really knew what they were doing. With cameras filming, they learned mining the hard way through trying things, making mistakes, and dealing with lots of frustration. Todd Hoffman led that first crew, and from day one, he had tons of problems. His biggest headache came from his wash plant, an important piece of equipment that kept breaking down and killing their work output. Luckily, the team's mechanic, James Harness, managed to keep things running, barely. Todd eventually brought in his friend Dave Turin, an experienced professional who'd worked in his family's quarry, to help get things back on track. But the season had plenty of drama. When mining expert Dakota Fred Hurt showed up midway through, things got really tense. One episode even showed things getting so bad that crew members got into an actual physical fight. Still, after all the chaos, the Hoffman crew managed to make it through, ending the season with 14.64 ounces of gold, enough to prove the dream could work and get the show renewed for a second season. That's when Tony Beets made his entrance. He first showed up in an episode called Drill or Die during Season 2. It wasn't a big role, but it made a lasting impression. Todd Hoffman's operation was falling apart, and Tony came in with one important piece of advice: test drill before mining. At that point, Todd's crew was losing trust in his leadership, so Tony's advice ended up saving the day. By then, Tony already had a reputation as one of the Klondike's most successful and respected miners, and people listened when he talked. What many people thought would be a one-time appearance quickly became something much bigger. Tony came back to the show many times, often acting as a teacher to young miner Parker Schnabel during Parker's first season working alone. By Season 4, Tony was no longer just a guest. He was a full cast member, bringing viewers into his own world at Paradise Hill in the Dawson Mining District. Paradise Hill, located in the heart of the Yukon's famous Klondike region, became one of the show's most well-known mining sites. It's the same area that sparked the original gold rush in the late 1800s, and to this day, Tony and his family continue to pull gold from that very ground. One of Tony's smartest moves came during Season 4 in August 2013, when he decided to lease his Scribner Creek claim to Parker Schnabel. That decision paid off in a big way. Parker managed to bring in an incredible 1,029 ounces of gold, breaking Todd Hoffman's previous record of 803 ounces. Ironically, even though Tony was already an experienced miner before joining the show, his early seasons on Gold Rush were far from easy. He had trouble keeping up with the tough on-screen competition, but in classic Tony style, he didn't back down. Then came Season 5, and that's when things took a wild turn. Instead of sticking with the usual wash plant setup, Tony went all in on a bold idea: buying a massive 75-year-old gold dredge and bringing it back to life. This wasn't just some rusty old machine. It was a real piece of Klondike history from the original Gold Rush days. For Tony, this wasn't about remembering old times. It was strategy. The dredge showed his belief that old-school, large-scale mining methods could still beat modern approaches. It was the perfect example of his go-big-or-go-home way of thinking. But bringing back something that huge wasn't going to be easy. The restoration quickly became one of the most ambitious projects ever shown on the show. The challenges were endless. Mechanical breakdowns, weather problems, transportation nightmares, and constant safety risks. Yet Tony never backed down. Between managing the rebuild and running his operation at Paradise Hill, he pushed forward with his trademark determination. By the end of Season 5, the dredge still wasn't fully working, but the groundwork had been done. The crew's constant effort set things up for its dramatic debut in later seasons. It was a reminder of Tony's vision, his willingness to bet everything on a piece of mining history and turn it into a modern gold powerhouse. That fearless way of thinking is exactly why fans call him the Viking of the Yukon. But in 2014, that Viking spirit got Tony and his crew into serious trouble. During the filming of Gold Rush, the Tamarack team decided to do what they jokingly called a Viking baptism for the dredge, hoping to change their luck. Their method: pouring gasoline into a pond and setting it on fire. As flames shot up, Tony stood by watching, fully embracing the chaos. When the episode aired in 2015, it caused immediate controversy. Viewers were shocked, and the Yukon government wasn't laughing either. Officials charged Tony, his company, and his employees with breaking the Yukon Water Act, specifically for putting waste in a water management area and failing to report it. A welder named Mark Favron pleaded guilty to 1 count and paid a small fine. But the case didn't end there. Prosecutors pushed for a much bigger penalty of over $30,000, arguing that Tamarack Inc. should also be held responsible. During the court hearing in Whitehorse, footage from the episode was shown as proof. The clip showed Favron dumping gasoline into the pond before setting it on fire, with Tony watching the entire event unfold. Yukon's chief mining inspector, Robert Savard, said in court that his office learned about the incident after a complaint from Environment Canada, starting the investigation that led to the charges. Favron claimed he hadn't realized he was being filmed and described it as something done without planning, just for fun while off the clock. But the judge, Peter Chisholm, wasn't convinced. He made it clear that Tony could have stopped the stunt but didn't, and that his participation in the filming made him fully responsible. The court even pointed out that the publicity from the show benefited Tony and noted his lack of feeling sorry. After the case, Tony admitted he should have known better. He said that as the man in charge, he should have stopped the act before it happened. In the end, he accepted the fine and described the whole ordeal as a joke that went too far. What's wild is that most fans didn't even realize the fire was real. A lot of people thought it was just some over-the-top TV stunt until the news broke that Tony and his crew had actually been found guilty in court. So when Gold Rush came back for its 12th season in September 2021, Tony was fired up and ready to prove something. This time, he had his eyes on a massive goal: 9,000 ounces of gold. To get there, Tony went all in, spending a jaw-dropping $5 million on a new fleet of heavy-duty machines to reopen his Indian River operation. And on top of that, he kept his Paradise Hill claim running around the clock, 24 hours a day, non-stop. But then came the curveball that changed everything. Tony didn't have a water license for Indian River. And he knew that was no small problem. After his past run-ins with the government, including that infamous Viking baptism controversy, he wasn't trying to get into more trouble. So with cameras rolling, Tony set out to finally get the paperwork approved so he could dig into one of the richest gold areas in the Yukon. In one tense moment that season, Tony walked into the office to find out if his license had been approved. The crew waited in silence. When he returned, his face said it all. The application had been rejected. He'd have to start over and resubmit the entire thing. Anyone who's dealt with government paperwork knows what that means: months of waiting. And for a miner working against the clock, that was time he simply didn't have. It was a crushing setback. Tony had already poured millions into preparing for Indian River, and now that investment sat doing nothing. Later, when he broke the news to his family, the frustration was clear. He admitted that no other claim could ever match Indian River's potential, calling it the family's piggy bank. Still, Tony and his crew didn't walk away empty-handed. They ended the week weighing in over 227 ounces of gold worth more than $400,000. It wasn't enough to cover the losses, but it was proof that Beets wasn't going down without a fight. That's the reality of gold mining. Huge risks, massive investments, and no guarantees. And as always, Tony handled it with that trademark grit. When one door closes, he just moves on to the next dig. Fast forward to season 13, and Tony Beets came back with the same relentless energy, chasing another massive goal, 5,000 ounces of gold. This time, he had to juggle everything from aging machinery to unpredictable Klondike weather, all while running multiple cuts across Paradise Hill, but that's where Tony thrives, in the chaos. One of his smartest moves that season was bringing his idle Kiwi wash plant back into play. Instead of letting it sit unused, Tony leased it to Shane at Dominion Creek. It was a clever business move, turning equipment that wasn't being used into profit, while helping smaller miners boost their own output. Still, the season wasn't easy. The crew faced breakdowns, hydraulic leaks, shredded conveyor belts, and endless supply chain delays. But Tony's hands-on leadership kept everything moving. His kids, Kevin, Monica, and Mike, were right there beside him, tackling problems, managing logistics, and proving they were ready to carry the Beets legacy forward.